everyone. I just wanted to get started. It's going to be such an interesting discussion. We need to have our full amount of time. My name is Johanna Rupp, your host tonight, and I want to thank you for coming out to Book Passage and supporting your local independent bookstore. It's very important. It's a really wonderful place that I love to come, and everyone can come together and discuss interesting things. This evening's guest, Eva Selhub, is an author, renowned speaker, mind-body medicine scholar, transformational consultant, and resiliency coach. She lectures at the Harvard Medical School and was the former director at the Benson Henry Institute for Mind-Body Medicine at the Massachusetts General Hospital. She is with us tonight to talk about her book, Your Health Destiny: How to Unlock Your Natural Ability to Overcome Illness, Feel Better, and Live Longer. Based on her years of experience and proven scientific evidence, this is a groundbreaking look at our internal health, how and why disease happens, and what we can do about it, and how we can all experience a vital sense of health and well-being. So please join with me in a warm welcome for Eva Selhub.
Nice. Is this movable?
Yes.
I have a thing about podiums. I never liked them. I don't like having a separation between myself or my patients or my clients or my audience, so I might actually even get down there. There we go. I'm also an amazing klutz, so if there's something for me to trip over, I will. Thank you. But I might do it just for your entertainment purposes, but I kind of need to have a pretty face for my brother's wedding this weekend, so I'll try not to trip. So really, I'm very thankful that you're all here. Because my brother's getting married this weekend, I emailed my publicist and said, "No, get me into Book Passages. I love that place." I was here in 2009 when for The Love Response, which was the first book I wrote. There's my editor right there, Davina, pointing you out. So I really love coming here, so I'm thankful that you're here, so I have somebody to talk to. So I want to tell you a little bit about this book and how it came to be, mostly because it's also why it's written the way it is, and I'm actually really, really proud of it. I'm proud of all my books, but this one I'm particularly proud of. And mostly because when I was trying to get another book deal, I couldn't. I got rejected one after the other. They just said, people said, well, I don't know, publishing is not really good right now, and we don't know if they want to take the risk, and I don't know. I mean, one rejection after the other, and I started really questioning myself. I thought, who the hell are you? There's a million, mind-body professionals out there, a million doctors are a dime a dozen. Everybody's, waving their hand saying, I've got the answer. I mean, how many self-help books are on these shelves? How many spiritual books are on these shelves? And, who the heck do I think I am? Thinking that I have something to say. So it really, really made me question myself and whether or not I was on the right track. And then one day, I got this call from one of the most fantastic people I've ever met. I had the pleasure of meeting. His name is Gideon Weil, who is the acquiring editor at Harper One, right here in your town. And he said, we want to talk to you. And I said, great, somebody wants to talk to me. And he said, we love you, but we don't like your proposal, as opposed to, all these people who love this proposal. And my proposal at the time was called The New Strong. It was about being resilient. And they said, there's a million books out there about resiliency right now, and who cares? Who really cares? I mean, another book about being happy, and another book about how to be resilient, another positive psychology book? You're not a psychologist. You're a doctor. You're an MD. Where's your voice? And so Gideon said, tell me about what do you do when people come to work with you? And I explained. And he said, it sounds to me like you help people change their health destiny. And I said, I think you just gave me the title of my new book. And he said, good, write something for me. So I took the weekend and I wrote 30 pages, just came out like that, sent it to him, and he said, you got yourself a contract. Just like that. I had no idea how the book was going to play out. No proposal. Just like that, from one chapter, That's how this book got started. And so he said, this is what I want you to do, is find your voice. You need to, nothing you've done thus far is representing exactly what it is you tell people to do, what you coach people to do, what you've gotten people to do over the 20 years you've been in practice. So I want to hear your voice. And I worked hard on this. You know, the first book was kind of, easy. We wrote it was fun. We went sort of back and forth. And this one I thought, I got to put in the medicine in this. How are people really going to want to read this? It's boring. It's not the spiritual flowy stuff I normally like to write, which is easy. And so I thought, well, what is it? What is it that I am teaching people to do that I want them to get out of this book that no one else is really doing, right? Again, we have, I don't know how many self-help books. I don't know how many spiritual books. I don't know how many times anybody's done a cleanse. But we have a world that's rampant with obesity, health diseases, and stress. And no one's really figured out what to do about it. And the bottom line is, and I've been saying this all along, and I say this for everybody who walks through my door, that unless you change the thermostat, you're always going to shiver when it gets cold outside. So that means that unless you reprogram your underlying mechanisms of how you react to the changes in your environment, aka stress, unless that changes, the habits that you've developed over your lifetime to help you cope won't change. Unless you discover what is causing that thermostat to change, what is causing that stress response system to change, and you figure out new ways to handle that change that feel good, you'll always go back to the coping mechanisms that have felt good before. So for instance, you've got a coping mechanism that is correct, like hunger. Are you aware that hunger is a stress? No, right? That's the other thing is. So if you were to say, how many people in this room would say you have, well, I don't know, you live here, so I don't know if you have as much stress as we do in Boston. Well, driving alone in Boston is enough to, well, I don't know, driving here wasn't so much fun. But if you would say that you have stress in your life, show hands. Okay? If you often have said, God, I'm so stressed, how many people have said that? Okay? So, if I'm in a talking room full of, 1,000 people, about 998 of them will raise their hand when I ask that question. Maybe 2 of them don't. So again, the question is, why are there so many books out there about stress and people are still stressed? And that's because you actually don't know what the definition of stress is. Because stress isn't bad. How many people know that? 2. Well, you might know that with what you do for a living. But stress is good. All right? The key is to learn how to use stress so it doesn't use you. Right? You wouldn't be here if it wasn't for stress. Stress is simply a physiological function when the mind-body system state of balance is being challenged. Period. That's all stress is. Okay? So your blood pressure drops, it's a stress. Your blood sugar drops, that's a stress. You think you'll be able to sit here the whole entire time without moving? You think? Can you sit here without moving this whole entire time?
No.
Why?
Because your body wants to move.
Why?
You're stressed.
It gets uncomfortable. Guess what discomfort is? It's a stress because these nerve signals feed back to your brain and say, if you don't move, this muscle's going to atrophy. You've got to move. Stress. And so what happens is the signals get sent and a stress response gets set off and physiological changes happen to initiate an action. So your executive mind says, okay, I'm going to move, and you move positions. And now guess what? You're comfortable. So it's a process that we call allostasis. You remember the word homeostasis? Which is a state of stability, which every living organism wants to be in, but we can't stay in because things are constantly changing. So it's called allostasis, which is the ability to achieve stability through change. You're comfortable, you're uncomfortable, you move, you get comfortable. That's allostasis. You're doing it all day. For a body to be healthy and happy, it needs to maintain allostasis. That means the stress needs to be managed and taken care of. okay? However, if the stress is not managed and not taken care of, you get an allostatic load because the stress response will fire, which means physiological changes occur like an increased heart rate, increased muscle tension, increased inflammation, and so on and so forth, that go on a continuum and don't stop because you haven't found a comfortable position. Or you're anxious because you can't find a comfortable position. Or you're upset because you can't find a comfortable position. The brain does not distinguish between real or imagined stress that can't be managed. All right, so what you need to know, if nothing else when you leave here today, is that there's two kinds of stress. Manageable stress and unmanageable stress, that's it. Manageable stress, great, bring it. No problem, right? There's no athlete, no professional, nobody who does anything well in their life that doesn't like stress. Because if you didn't have it, you wouldn't do anything, you'd be dead. You'd be an inert, non-existent, dead being, okay? So it's good. You need it. You need it to thrive. You need it to be alive. What you don't need is the unmanageable, the perception of unmanageable stress that brings you down, that takes the energy out of the system. It takes away the chi rather than it increases the chi, as traditional Chinese medicine has been trying to teach us for thousands of years. And so that's my segue into the understanding that the language that has now allowed me to merge the Western science with Eastern tradition has been stress physiology, because it's all about balance and not being in balance. That's all it's about. And so when you start using that language, you start understanding that there are things you can do to regain that balance. Now, if I said to you, as your doctor, you have diabetes, how would that make you feel?
Bad.
Bad. Like there's nothing you can do. Well, what if I said to you there's a sugar imbalance?
They don't understand.
Well, you feel there's an imbalance in your sugar and there's things that we can do to try to get it back into balance. How does that feel to you?
Manageable.
Manageable. You see how simple that is? You still have the diagnosis, but now you have a belief that you can handle it. That creates all kinds of physiological changes in the body. It lowers inflammation, it lowers the stress response, it triggers dopaminergic reward systems in the brain that create a placebo response. You know the placebo response? So we know we look at it, right, to see whether a drug works, but I look at it to see how powerful the mind is. Okay, and we know that. And we know that when we create those changes, both in the environmental changes, both internally and externally, the genes change. Are you familiar with the field of epigenetics? Yes.
Are you saying that powerlessness creates illness?
Powerlessness does. The reason being, if you look at the stress response, okay, we're looking at the stress response and the physiology and pathology that's associated with the stress response, the belief that I can versus the belief that I can't, the belief that I'm okay versus the belief that I'm not okay. It actually creates an increased load, allostatic load, which is then associated over long term with chronic stress and the health problems associated with chronic stress. And we know that the resiliency model between the helplessness, this is, what's his name?
Learned helplessness?
Learned helplessness and resiliency. It's just went right out my head.
Not Pavlov.
No, he's recent. No, Seligman. Martin Seligman's work. And we know that. We know that there's a health model associated with resiliency, that the resilient mindset is healthier and it actually can also be learned. Yes?
Did you just say you could change the genes because of it?
Well, so let's get to that, epigenetics, right?
Well, I've always believed that.
Well, it's
First
true.
time I've ever heard it.
Well, there's this wonderful research now, this burgeoning field of epigenetics that talks about how genes can express themselves. So it's not the DNA itself, it's how the DNA expresses itself. So we know that certain environments can turn genes on and turn genes off, and it's really a cool thing because it's passed down through generations. Now all your genes come with a map, come with a manual. This is what you do in this type of environment, and this is what you do in this type of environment, and because we're an efficient system, your system doesn't want to have to think about everything for the first time. So imagine as if you learn how to tie your shoe, but every day you wake up you have to learn how to tie your shoe again. So the body's very efficient. You don't have to learn how to walk all the time. You have these motor neurons and sensory neurons and this whole neuropathic pathway that remembers how to do stuff. okay? That's why if you don't use it, you lose it, because it needs to constantly be reminded, because it will go into rote and doing something automatic, okay? And so, for instance, if you walk a certain way, your muscles will get used to walking that way all the time, and the other muscles will stop being utilized, which actually will make you stupid, because the neurons in your brain associated with those muscle groups will stop being used. But when you start doing things like probably what you're teaching, an Alexander technique or Feldenkrais, when you start engaging different muscle groups doing different movements, you actually increase the neurons in the brain. So I went off track there, but that actually has to do a lot with this, because neuroplasticity and epigenetics are very close together in that things can change. So for instance, these genes have manuals. Let's say the gene for fat metabolism versus fat storage, depending on the environment, aka what you eat and how much exercise you actually get involved in, will actually tell that gene whether to metabolize fat or store fat, or where you live, if you live in a cold environment versus a hot environment. So we know that changing the environment can change how these genes express themselves, and that goes all the way to the immune system and then the neurosensory system and all different kinds of systems, including cancer, including our immune system and cancer forming. Even Herb Benson, who I used to work for, had done some studies just on meditation alone that can actually change expression of breast cancer genes. So we know that both the stress can offset the genes in a negative way, but we also know creating nurturing environments can offset the genes in a positive way. And that's just what's really exciting. We have a lot more control over our health than we've ever realized. But again, it comes down to whether or not the system is being stressed or not. Again, it's not about stress long term, because you're in stress all the time. It's just life. It's about the whole mind-body system. On a cellular level, knowing that it has the capacity to handle stress. And that's what this book is about. It's giving people that knowledge, that information about neuroplasticity, about epigenetics, about stress physiology, about the placebo response. It's all there, written in a way that won't put you to sleep, I promise. And then every chapter is broken up into systems. So we have the cardiovascular system, the immune system, the gastrointestinal system, and I walk you through each system. I'll give you the information, what you need to know about the anatomy. Again, in a way that won't put you to sleep. I made my mother read it. She's the most critical person I know. And it wasn't great for my psyche growing up, but it's really good when you need a book to be looked at. And then I also talk about statistics. You know, what are the things your doctor is looking at, right? What is the information you need to know to be empowered? So I actually break down each chapter into an acronym called POWER. P-O-W-E-R. So P is about first taking a pause. It's becoming aware of, let me just stop this busyness that I'm in, this track of stress and worry and life, and just take a pause for a minute. And let me, and optimize my awareness. What is happening in my body? What is it that I need to know? What knowledge, because knowledge is power, isn't it? So what is it that I need to know? So that's where you start learning about the anatomy, you start learning about statistics. You also will learn about what Western traditions say about that part of the body. And the way I've broken that up is to look at everything from a systems approach, from functions. Like if you think about the heart, right? What are the functions of the heart? It's a give and receive, right? It has a rhythm. It pumps life force through the body. So we look at also your life. In what way do I give and receive? In what way do I maintain the rhythm of my life? In what way am I really fulfilling my life force? So that's how it's all tied together. It's a constant bridge back and forth between your actual anatomy, your physiology, the science, and then the wisdom. And then it's actually also teaching you what I call witnessing. That's W, witnessing your physiology, a mindfulness exercise of becoming aware of how does the body speak. Because the body has a language. Every sensation in your body is the body letting you know what it needs all the time, but you've lost the ability to understand that. Okay, children know that, but they lose that when their brain develops. So this is about not only developing your brain, but also opening your heart and relaxing the body so that you can listen. So that's the W. Then E is uncovering and examining underlying emotions or stories, because the body actually holds on to a lot of stories. You've got little brains all throughout your body. Again, chakra systems, Western traditions have said this for thousands of years, but science is telling us now that we've got little brains throughout the body that hold on to these memories. And if you actually go in there, you'll uncover them. R is about restoring, reprogramming, about relieving that stress, reprogramming, resetting, getting the body back into balance. And it's giving you nutrition, it's giving you exercise, giving you meditations, it's giving you many different types of prescriptions based on that bodily system so that you can get it stronger and healthier. And so that's basically what I do when I'm coaching and working with people. And so I've given it to you in a book so that you don't have to have me. I know you prefer me, but I don't fit in your pocketbook. And there's also actually, I don't think they have that here, but there is actually an audio version, which I read as well. Oh, you do have that? Oh, good. Yeah. So why don't I take your questions, if you have any?
So the genetics,
Mm-hmm.
that they can be changed.
There are some that can be. I mean, again, this is a new field, burgeoning field, but new research is finding that there are ways that, and again, most of the research right now is with nutrition, which is, a big part of this book as well. But yeah, that's a really exciting field. It can be. Again, it's how the gene expresses itself. It's not the actual DNA, but then how it actually expresses itself. Physically, when the expression is like blue eyes versus green eyes, fat metabolism versus fat storage, that sort of thing. Whether a gene turns into a cancerous form or stays dormant or goes back to sleep. That's what we're looking at. Yes?
Do you lean towards certain kind of dietary preferences, or does the diet depend on who you're working with and really vary?
Well, I would say no, it doesn't really vary. I have very, very basic rules, and then within that we work with everybody and what they can tolerate and what we can't. Again, for me, there's so many diets out there, and I just hate that word. I would much rather the person get to know their body and say, what do I tolerate, what I don't. So the major issue is, so when I talked about homeostasis, and so what the body will do is reach a homeostasis. It always will try to find a steady state. And the majority of people in this world live in a sick homeostasis, so they actually don't know that they're not healthy. And they realize they're healthy when they start feeling good. So I teach people by contrast, and I say, do this for me for 2-3 weeks, see how you feel, and then let's introduce stuff and see how you feel. It's really about paying attention to the sensations in my body. So I pretty much have everybody go, grain-free, dairy-free, sugar-free, basically do paleo, we modify for the vegetarian group for a couple of weeks just to see how you feel. Just get all that stuff out, totally organic. Let's just see how you feel for a couple of weeks, and then we'll introduce stuff back and see how you feel. And invariably people feel really badly. And they don't realize that they've been feeling really badly all along because the body's constantly inflamed. And they don't realize that they've been inflamed because they're used to it. But then they're not inflamed, and then they get inflamed and they notice right away. So I'd rather people discover what diet they want to be on because it feels good. And this comes me back to changing habits.
Discover from inside out.
That's right, with a little bit of guidance, right? So the rule of thumb is get the sugar out. Get the gluten and salt actually isn't that bad, but the added salt maybe, like the tons of it, yeah. But that's because people have lost their taste bud. Start being mindful, start tasting the food. You might not even like it, so don't eat it. Why add salt to it? Just eat something else.
Do you even sea salt, anything?
No, that's not else. That's what I said. Not else. It's not. Salt has gotten a bad name, just like eggs. I always laugh about the egg thing. It's like one of the best things you can eat. Unless you're a vegetarian, you don't eat eggs. But again, anything can be modified for somebody's needs, and especially if you've got any type of autoimmune disorder, any type of inflammatory disorder, it's pretty key for you to get off gluten. Like 100%. If you walk around feeling tired or achy, I get everybody off gluten. And again, we'll reintroduce and see how it feels. And I'm also not about for life, about I can't for life. This is about getting the body strong. Because right now it's weak and it can't handle anything, right? So if I'm a weakling, then I'm always going to be like, oh my God. But if I'm feeling really strong, I'm saying, oh, bring it. I can handle a little bit, right? The body is highly resilient, it's incredibly resilient and can handle a lot. And this comes down to that idea of wiggle room. Whether it's your genes or whether it's your ability to handle something, there's wiggle room. We all have wiggle room, but some of us have lost some of that wiggle room, right? Like some genes are stuck, there aren't a lot of wiggle room, but even if you're, just because your parents had something doesn't mean you're gonna have it. It depends on how some people, again, have no wiggle room, you have no option. It's gonna happen, but the question is how bad is it gonna be? And some people have the option of not getting whatever their parents had, depending on how they take care of themselves. So we don't really know why any one disease happens, but we do know that we can control it. We can control its expression. That's what we do know. And so again, it comes back down to I want that power taken back by the individual. How does it feel when I eat this? Okay? I mean, I eat sugar and within half an hour I have a headache. I don't like that feeling as much as I like that chocolate cake. I don't like that feeling. I'd rather not have that headache because it really sucks. So I don't eat it. But it doesn't mean I can't have it, I just don't like the way I feel. So the choices that we start making, habits start forming, also because I have replacements for that. But I also don't go for that chocolate cake like I used to when I'm anxious. I take care of the anxiety. So we have adaptive coping and maladaptive coping, right? I'm hungry, I eat, and then there's I'm anxious, I eat. So, and that's what happens. So unless you take care of the anxiety, you're still gonna go for that coping mechanism you've been doing since you were 2. Why would you give it up? It's always made you feel good. You have to figure out another way to feel good. And then you don't go to the thing that actually in the end will make you feel bad. So again, it's getting to that locus of control of what makes me feel good and what does feeling good really mean from a healthy perspective, not from, I need relief right now. I need immediate relief, I need to feel good right now. We're not talking about that. We're talking about really feel good from the core. And that's what this book is really all about. That's basically the core message, which is why it's about having that power back. Yes?
I'm fascinated with, a lot of things. But I've heard the term allopathic.
It just means Western medicine.
It is Western medicine. The allo, what does that mean? Because you're also talking about, allopathic I assume means a problem, pathic.
Yep.
And then homeo or
Homeopathic, you mean?
But you were saying
allostasis.
Allostasis.
So there's homeostasis, which is a steady state, and there's allostasis, which is the change, the ability to achieve stability through change.
What is allo? What's the Greek or the Latin in that?
Allo? You know what? I don't know. I would say change, probably.
It's kind of big.
Is it
Allosaurus.
Allosaurus?
That's a new dinosaur
Change.
they just found.
Oh.
A giant one.
Okay. And then I'm also getting from you is the more one can expand one's context,
That's right.
and therefore sort of interact with the environment more and more, having
That's right.
more and more of that interaction.
That's right, and knowing
Yeah.
that you're not separate from your environment, and that's really, again, that this depth of the spiritual experience, the depth of your experience with nature, you're not separate from nature. And our cycles of our lives move like the cycles of nature, and that we can learn from wisdom traditions who've always used nature as a pathway to understand, but it's also if I live in nature, then I eat nature. I don't eat things that are not made in nature, which means my body is going to process them very well. So it's really about I know that I am my environment. So what do I want that environment to be? Am I going to shower in coffee or am I going to shower in water? What's it going to be? So the outside mirrors the inside. And so yes, it is about really having a much broader idea of the sense of self and in your relationship to the environment, including the people you keep around you.
And including just the physiology. I mean, the interaction that we have. I think we get draw in information, don't we?
All the time.
Of physiology.
All the
Yes,
time.
Right.
All the time. I mean, you know, when I have
And subconsciously too.
all
That's
the
when it
time.
happens.
Yeah.
All the time, and you're not aware of it. What happens is the body will pick up a signal that it's had before and will react. And that reaction will then send off an emotional response. The emotional response will bring in together a memory. Now remember, your memory stored is like an icon in a computer, and a Google search is not specific. So if your memory was just logic, no emotion, you might not remember much, but you remember the details would be 100% accurate. Okay? So if I gave you a very boring lecture and 1 + 1, blah, 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 and you actually wrote it down and you sat there and you memorized it, you would be very accurate in your memorization of that history. That memory would be accurate. Emotional memory is like your dreams. It's completely inaccurate. It's just built on top of each other. So if you've had an emotional response now, it'll pull back to when you were 2 and 5 and 10 and 20 and bring them all together into this sort of hodgepodge of memory and this all or nothing belief. Like my sister, she was so funny. When we got on the plane, oh, it was just this morning. It seemed like such a long time ago. And there was a baby sitting in front of us, and the baby was crying. I always get the babies in front of me. Really? Really? Always? Every 1,000 times you've flown, you've had baby in front of you. And so the brain will go, and I talk about these cognitive distortions, that when you're in that stress response and an emotional response, it actually will pull all your memories from your entire lifetime, drop your ability to think clearly, makes you very stupid, and drop, you know, when you have with your partner, you never take out the garbage. Well, I took them out yesterday. So that's what happens is that you drop into this emotional response that then connects with a story of your victimization. Okay? Everybody's got a story. We all got a story. But we all have a story of our success, and we're feeling really lucky and feeling really good. And so the problem is that when you're in that negative emotional response, that story of success is like non-existent. Everybody has one. And so you could be around somebody that triggers that emotional response, that triggers that lens, the victim lens, and now you're seeing that situation in a very negative way, which doesn't have to be. Now, it can be a bad, like a not good situation, but you could see it from, that growth place rather than that victim place. Even, there's a term post-traumatic growth versus post-traumatic stress, and that's really where we're leading towards now, is how people, and I teach that in the book. I have a section called the virtues, the 3 V's, the virtues, victories, and values. Rather than looking at why I was victimized by this situation, what did I learn? How did I grow? What are my values? What are my victories? What are my virtues? And again, this sounds like positive psychology stuff, but when you get that mind into a place of I can versus I can't, you change the course of that physiological response. Okay? You're turning into the placebo response, which we know works, can work as well as a drug. Okay? So yeah, everything in your environment is triggering a sensory system that is responding to whether or not you're in balance or not, whether you're safe, whether you're not, whether you're valued, whether you're not, whether your species is going to survive or not. Remember, your brain doesn't distinguish between real threats and imagined threats. It just goes according to an emotional response. So if you correct that emotional response, you get back up in that zone. Okay? It's good stuff. So buy the book and read it.
I think we have time for one
Yeah.
last question.
So I have not looked through your book yet.
That's okay, I forgive you.
Thank you. Talk to me a little bit about depression, anxiety,
Mhm.
and the way Western medicine treats it with medication, and it's all response
Yes.
and
Yeah.
memory and wiring and
So I have the last chapter in the book is on the brain, and it's focused on working with sort of cognitive functioning and the sort of depression, anxiety. And one of the things, as much as I love, well, I don't really love them, but I like some of them, my fellow doctors. They're focusing on what they know, and they're focusing on treating a symptom. So I don't disagree with medication. The reason why medication for me is what I call a Band-Aid. So if you're bleeding, the system can't get into its strength It can't get into its resiliency mode. It's kind of trying to put out that fire. So you need to put out that fire long enough to start rebuilding the system. So for me, I use medications if that person cannot do their work. If you're not sleeping, forget about it. Your depression's just not gonna go away. It's just physiologically very difficult to treat depression when you're not sleeping. It's difficult to treat fibromyalgia if you're not sleeping. So we look at what is it that we need to do short term to get that system to stop bleeding, to put the fires out, so then we can then reinstate new programming that then we can get off the medication. That's how I use it. So again, Western physicians look at it as thinking they're treating. My father's really funny. He's a biochemist, and I remember when I was looking at him eating like all this terrible food, and I said, "Dad, your cholesterol." He goes, "My cholesterol's fine." I'm like, "You're on Lipitor. It's not fine." I get that all the time. I get people coming in. I ask them about their health history, and no, I don't have a medical history. I don't have any past medical history. And then I said, "Okay, well, are you using vitamins or medications?" And I get this list. I thought you said you have no medical history. Well, the medications are treating it. So it's not just Western physicians. It's a lot of, again, this book is about informing people that that is not a treatment. It's a stopgap. It's allowing the stress response to be quieted a bit, because if you're overboard, it's very difficult to go from here to here, but you can go from here to here. Okay, and so then the rest is, what are the underlying beliefs? How do we get that stress response to go down? How do we get the endorphins up? How do we get that person reconnected with the larger world? How do we get the darkness to go away? How do we get that notion of I'm safe back? And then we sort of look at all those, the nutrition's a big piece. Supplements, nutrition, how can we regulate that physiology? And part of it is also teaching that person to know that they're going to get depressed. It's just life. And that's not a bad thing. That the system gets sick, that's not a bad thing. It rights itself just like nature does. So again, if there's a lot of that, but I'm not an opponent for medication. I'm just not in it for long term. But it has to be if that person's not going to take care of himself. Yeah.
What supplements do you believe that everybody should be on?
I don't believe in the word should. And that turns on the stress response.
Yeah.
If I should, I do.
agree.
Yeah. In fact, I want you guys to do that. I do this with people everywhere I go. Put up your hand. I want you to take a vow with me, please. Say, I vow.
I vow.
Never to should on myself.
Never to should.
And should on myself.
Should on.
I vow to love myself anyway.
I vow to love myself.
All right.
Amen.
Yeah, amen. So I'm not about a should, but again, it's looking at what am I getting from my diet? Where do I live? So vitamin D is a very important, especially in my parts of the world. Most of the people are very low in vitamin D. And over the winter, have them really up their doses. Omega-3 fish oils, again, or some type of form of omega-3s that most people need. It's for the anti-inflammation. So those are the two really big ones that I focus on. Not big on multivitamins. You can get that really through healthy nutrition. But the other one, the big one, are the probiotics. So either through diets, but most people need to be on some type of probiotic short term because of their inflammatory response and their guts aren't working. So at least for a few months I put people on probiotics to get the gut working again. And then we can just really introduce fermented foods and prebiotic foods and things like that and see how they go if they stop taking them. So those are the three major ones that I pretty much recommend across the board.
You think someone who lives in California here needs vitamin K? Or
Vitamin D?
I'm sorry.
You know what, you gotta see how you feel and go get yourself checked. I mean, part of this is absorption. Like what are you absorbing? What's metabolizing? How's it working? What's happening with your other hormones, right? So what's your calcium level? What's your stress level? We know that when you have a hyperactivated stress response, it's gonna start withdrawing the calcium from your bones. You're more prone to osteoporosis and that sort of stuff. So what are you doing? What are your other minerals and vitamins like? So it's, it's all connected.
Sure.
Yeah.
Do you know what the difference is between vitamin D and vitamin D3?
Well, they're just talking about the active form. So the one that's recommended to be the active form that your body actually can utilize best is the D3.
Oh, thank you.
Okay? All right, so I will be signing books.
Yes.
Thank you for being here.